Another thing you talk about is confirmation bias.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I actually love the whole concept of confirmation bias because I use that myself in practice and I look for it a lot too. And particularly at a time in this country, you know, I think that's something that a lot of people are thinking about these days, which are, you know, inherent biases in the workplace. So confirmation bias is essentially the idea that, you know, all of us as human beings have our biases. We just do. I mean, there isn't really any way around that. But what people tend to do is they tend to, if they meet, like, let's say, a white male from Texas, they tend to have biases about this person. They, you know, will likely think that this person is a Republican. You know, he probably drives a truck, you know, is for gun rights. There's these sorts of like typical stereotypes, right? So confirmation bias is when you meet that person, you tend to look for indicators that will confirm your bias. So if he does pull up in a truck, you're like, of course. If he likes barbecue, you're like, of course. But that also means that you ignore things that are against that stereotype. So, you know, if he says he, you know, speaks Japanese or like, you know, was an exchange student in Japan, you know, you might be like, oh, that's interesting, that's really different, but then that won't change your mind about him as much as you getting an affirmation that he likes barbecue, if that makes sense. You know, so you tend to look for things to confirm your bias. So one of the ways I say that you can actually up your Q factor and you can up your likability is when you actually go against people's biases. So another perfect example is, let's say you meet a Chinese guy who works in the IT department, and you figure he probably loves to play video games, and he, you know, any number of stereotypes that you can think about of a Chinese man in an IT department of a big bank, let's say. But then if you find out he likes to, you know, polka dance at night, you know, with his wife, or that he goes out and smokes cigars, and, you know, anything that's absolutely so crazily different from what you expect, that automatically ups his likability. You suddenly like take notice and you say, wait a minute, like this person is absolutely nothing like what I thought. That actually has a very dramatic effect on upping a person's likability. So I always say, not that I'm telling people to go out there and specifically, you know, try to find and do things that are going to be so different from their own stereotype, but just to be aware of that and to not be afraid of expressing that individuality.